Welcome to the Lynn Community Television Show, a program where we focus on organizations working to make their impact right here and around the city of Lynn. And here with me today from the Food Project, we have Manny Encarnacion, Youth Development Specialist, and we have John Wang, North Shore Regional Director. Guys, thanks for being here today.
No problem, thanks.
So we were talking a little bit before the program, got a lot of exciting stuff to talk about, some continuous improvements for the Food Project and other ways to get involved. But let's start the show off with some detail about who you guys are and how you're involved. Manny?
Yeah, so I just came back to the Food Project last year in May, but I worked when I was a youth, and I came back as a seasonal crew leader.
All right.
About 3 years ago.
So you're like, John, this guy must be like kind of like a spokesperson for you. He got involved at the youth level, and now he's back, and he's actually participating in the day-to-day. So you're the Northeast Regional Director. What does that mean?
So for the North Shore, it's like, all the way from Lynn to Gloucester, and then basically 2 of our physical sites are in Lynn and Beverly, or 3 sites, Lynn, Beverly, and Wenham.
Okay.
And so kind of like overseeing all the farming, youth development, operations, community, partnership, engagement.
So North Shore, Massachusetts, not Northeast America. It's a little smaller region, but still a lot of work to be done. I mean, one farm is enough to manage. You manage multiple farms, but you also have a lot of people who you work with that make this a little bit more achievable. I want to talk a little bit about just the Food Project overall, give you guys an opportunity to explain it in your own words for our viewers who aren't really familiar with it. So in a nutshell, Manny, how would you explain the Food Project?
Yeah, so the Food Project brings a lot of youth and adults together in partnership working on for the love of the land and for people. So a lot of the work that we do with our youth is really connecting residents to the food, what's going on in the food system in Lynn now. And a lot of the work that we also do is bringing different volunteers to work with our youth on our Serve and Grow volunteering on the farms.
Volunteers are a big part of what you do, but they also get to take something away. What really speaks volumes to me about the Food Project is that you give people an opportunity to kind of go back to the root that everybody shares. And especially today's day and age, we hear a lot about differences, whether it's cultural indifferences or bigotry or racism. And ultimately, we all have the same requirements, right? Food, clothing, shelter, and water. And it's just a really cool thing. I don't mean to get too philosophical on it, but growing food is something that it's our relationship to the earth. I don't need to tell you guys about that. So John, in your own words, how would you describe the Food Project?
Yeah, I mean, just building off what Manny was talking about, a lot of the main focus areas, you can break it down into like a youth component, a food access, distribution, justice component, and then also like a community engagement component. And so we do a lot of work in those kinds of 3 areas. So we employ young people, we grow, if you count the greater Boston region, we grow about 275,000 pounds of food. Generically, a pound of food serves 3 people, to give you kind of like a scope of how many people we're reaching. And then community engagement, we believe that a big thing in fixing food systems is like resident engagement, and just really, instead of coming in and telling folks what to do, it's like really being in dialogue and conversation with each other to find out what we can do and how we can leverage our resources of money, labor, materials, supplies, expertise to benefit like what folks want.
So the Food Project, you guys have been around for about 10 years now?
In the North Shore, we started in 2005. So Manny was one of the first youth in the cohort, and I was actually in his position back in 2005. And then so the greater Boston region actually started in 1991.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you guys have been around for a lot, and I think everybody kind of has heard of the Food Project, but could you give us any examples of like the work that has been demonstrated in the city outside of gardens, some of the events that you've done?
Yeah, there's so some of the things we've done is like we employ young people year in, year out. So we hire high school age youth every summer. And then we also keep on hiring like veteran youth that come back. So in the summer, we generally hire about 50 or so young people. Some other events that we do, we host a farm fest annually that happens like in May. So in addition to the gardens and the farms that we do, we invite like community gardeners and residents that are interested in gardening to come pick up seedlings, listen to some great music from local bands, and just like celebrate kind of that connection and talking across difference with all sorts of people coming together. And then we do a lot of different things that we can share also as well.
All right. So you guys have a couple of events coming up. The Well, the first event is going to be the Food for Us. We're going to talk about this project a little bit more in depth, but I do want to bring some awareness to the city's Farm Fest. It's happening May 20th, and this is over at 100 Munroe Street in Lynn. This isn't the first time you guys have done this.
No.
Okay.
Definitely. It's been going on for probably several years now, I would say. And each year it's always building up and there's more people. So I think we might have to relocate in the foreseeable future, but it's a pretty good space right now.
All right. So Manny, now you're a big part of like coordinating, you're a front lines kind of guy. So when these events happen, you're probably running around like a madman. But you also probably get some opportunity to hear back from members of the community on what type of benefit that this is. Can you explain to us some of the benefits that this brings to Lynn?
Yeah, so a lot of the work that we were doing in the fall and the winter with our youth was really getting residents kind of in that first step of engagement, of figuring out what the food system is and what that may look like, and really thinking about like what's in your food. So a lot of the work that we're doing now in the spring with our Food for Us events is really getting residents more engaged and looking at different scenarios of how people are living and what they have to go through to buy groceries. And then looking at like the food access in Lynn, looking at different access points of like supermarkets, corner stores, fast food restaurants, sit-in restaurants and stuff like that. So a lot of the work that we'll be doing at these events is kind of having more open discussions with residents about like what they've noticed, what they've experienced, and what they want to dream of, what they think the Lynn food system should look like.
Cool. Definitely when it comes down to, I give you a little bit of a flashback to my college days. I remember I was in biology class and like within 10 minutes I was like, this teacher is not going to like me very much. Because she was like, you better be here on time, you better do your homework, and I was like, what is this? But as I kind of gone through, learning about my own body, I was generally interested in it. And she was a tough grader, so I got a C. I was happy with that. I wasn't anticipating it at all. But just bringing the awareness to a person, to your own self, as to like what sugar is going to do to you versus what carbohydrates are going to do to you, how your body processes that. It's very interesting. It's a fun type of thing. So it doesn't surprise me that you guys have grown and you've been able to generate more interest as you go and go on and on and on. Food to me is kind of like an enjoyment type thing, but to you guys it's a fuel source. Right, so this is something that you're meant to have in order to go about your day and put some snacks in you, and okay, that's enough snacks, and now I can go do my task. For me, I'm like, hey, I'll have a piece of that pizza. That sounds like good to me. But you guys have some new partnerships coming up, some continuous improvements as well. So the Food for Us, it's 3 separate dates, April 1st, the 22nd, and then May 6th. And you guys are going to hold all these events over at the Lynn YMCA, which is 20 Neptune Boulevard. If you're new to the city and you don't know where the Y is, or maybe just never been there like I haven't in a long time. But let's talk about this continuous improvement, Food for Us. John.
Yeah, so Food for Us is a section, it's kind of building off what Manny was saying before, of like specifically understanding what the Lynn food system looks like. So in addition to kind of the maps that we're mapping where all the food access points are in the city, we're also going to be presenting information from surveys from Lynn residents, about 500 or so, talking about, reflecting back on what you were saying, like, everyone loves food, it's fuel, it's enjoyment. And some people might not have access to the specific food that they can enjoy and be healthy. And so in those surveys and in some of the research that we've been doing is like there are certain communities in Lynn that don't necessarily have those access points. And so it's just trying to learn about that and understanding about that. We're partnering with the Lynn Food and Fitness Alliance, which is under the Division of Public Health here in the city. And we're hosting kind of this Lynn Grows Steering Committee. And so it's stakeholders in the city from various institutions, nonprofits, and our goal for the Food for Us and the Food for Thought piece is to try to recruit residents to sit at the same table with those people that have power to understand and be able to make recommendations and goals to build a better food system and a more directed approach of how we can move our resources to help support that.
Sounds very organized, and you've got a lot of different players in the game who can actually work to make an impact. And what's beautiful about this is you're giving an outlet to residents to receive feedback and give feedback. So volunteers are a big part of what you guys do. Manny, you could probably speak to this, the value that a volunteer holds to an organization like the Food Project. What is it to you?
Yeah, so a lot of the times during the summer, we have all the youth that we hire that are working on the farm, so those are where our hands are coming from. And then during the fall and in the springtime, when we have a limited number of youth that are working, and they usually only work on the weekends, volunteers are our main source of getting work done. So that's like the biggest piece that I think is so important for us to get volunteers, because the people that are coming, whether it's individual volunteers that live in the city or different organizations that are coming to help, really help us cultivate all the food that we're putting out there in the city of Lynn.
All right. In a city like Lynn and, other surrounding communities, if you're looking at, Somerville or Lawrence or Chelsea, there's tons of different ways to get involved and to give back. And almost so many where it's kind of confusing, like, well, where do I want to spend my time and where is my time going to be best spent? If there's somebody at home right now on the fence as to whether or not they should volunteer with the food project, I mean, what type of insight would you give them?
I don't know. I think it's really seeing where the food is coming from, because all the food that we grow goes to different hunger relief organizations on the North Shore area, and also at our farmers markets that we host in Central Square. And it's about like getting the food from the community that you're living or serving in. So if you live or work in the city of Lynn, being able to see where your food is being grown and kind of having that in the back of your mind as you're going about your shopping for your groceries.
And these guys are going to probably take a little bit of knowledge away from this too. They're going to be able to know how to cultivate food. Do you see as a result some of these guys actually starting their own gardens?
Yeah, so a lot of people that have volunteered with us or have seen our gardens or seen our farms definitely reach out to have a spot on the community gardens that we have. I've also had people reach out to see if we would be able to build or help build raised beds at different either institutions or personal homes. A lot of the work that our food corps members doing is building raised beds at a lot of the elementary schools in Lynn and getting third graders really interested in how to grow their own food really early on.
Yeah, it's definitely, I remember going through like the seed class, right? And it was like, all right, we'd have one seed, right? And then get it all wet, and then a little leaf would pop up. And we planted it, we'd wait for it all year long. And we were like, look at it, it's growing, it's growing. And these are like actual crops that people are growing, and then they get to eat. And it's like, I mean, it's got to be a certain type of reward that you really don't know about until you're there and you see it and you go through the trials and tribulations. One thing that I've noticed in the city is that there are more home gardens popping up. So now you've been on the ground level, John, for a long time. I mean, this is attributed to work like yours and work like your peers and people in your network. What does that mean to you?
I mean, one of the things that I have to reflect about is I just feel lucky to have been in a place and working at the same area to see kind of, what MLK was talking about, long arc of social justice, especially in regards to food justice. And yeah, it seems like it's a really, critical moment right now where there's a lot of interest. It seems like there's the right resources, there's the right organizations, the right people that are moving towards it. And just like an aside, the Lynn Food and Fitness Alliance has like a resource showing where there potentially could be gardens in the whole city that have water access that are on city land that folks can look at. And so if they're interested in gardening, they can like look on the website and apply to bring some more gardens to the forefront. So it's not just the food project anymore. So I think that's also like a great step. So it's like the city getting involved. And so I think we're just like in a really great place right now.
I want to kind of take this off, not so much off subject, but just I'm curious because I've always been like, I wouldn't say like a buff, but I've always been interested in supply chain. So how things happen. So if you're getting chicken, where was the chicken grown? How did it get to the processing plant? What do they do at the processing plant? And then how do they package it and get it over? But when it comes to like that type of market, it's pretty expensive. There are a lot of in-betweens. So I'm just curious to kind of get an idea like, versus, so I'm a guy who goes to Stop and Shop, whatever's closest to me. Like if I feel like it, I'll go over to like Market Basket because it's cheaper, but I don't like the traffic in there, so I try to avoid it. But I spend a lot of money on groceries, and I mean it's like I have to do this because I gotta eat. In regard to like economics, is it a lot less expensive to grow food as opposed to like going out and buying your food every single day?
I mean, it's going to depend, I think, all the different places that you shop. One of the things that we're working on at the food project, part of our strategic plan, is building win-win distribution systems. So what that means, it's a win for the farmer and a win for the consumer. And so win for the farmer basically is they can sell their produce at a cost that can help them make a decent livelihood. And then also it's a win for the consumer if they can actually afford it. And especially for folks that normally don't have access to fresh, healthy, local produce, that's a big thing. And we recognize that because we're a nonprofit, we can take risks in helping to develop those kinds of markets, as opposed to a local farmer that is interested in exploring that, but would have to risk it all and just could potentially lose all their life savings in that. So kind of our goal is to developing some of those model systems, and then if they're successful, passing them off to other folks so that they can do it without a lot of the risk. And so we have examples about that with the Lynn Central Square Market. We started that by ourselves and then invited other vendors as soon as we knew it was successful. And the reason why we're still there is just because it's our flagship market, but the vendors are able to just run that market by themselves. They come every season to staff that, and it's a big win for them. And then one of the things that's coming that Lynn is one of the pilots for across the country was a matching program. It was called Boston Bounty Bucks, and now it's, I think the city is playing more of a role in it in Boston, and then it's being replicated across the country. So if folks that were SNAP eligible would spend $10 towards healthy fresh produce at these places, there was a fund that would match it by $10.
Oh, wow.
And so to increase their purchasing power to be able to purchase produce, because we know economic inequality is a big thing, and at the food project we can't wholly address that, but we can address a slice of the pie in terms of that whole issue. And then this year, currently, sorry, I'm talking a little bit longer.
No, that's what we're on a talk show.
Great.
Talk it up.
There's a healthy incentives program that's going to be piloting this year, and so depending on your household income and household numbers, if you go to a farmer's market or a CSA and you're SNAP eligible, depending on that, you either get a $20, $40, or $60 match that you could put towards it.
Wow. So there's a lot of involvement, but there's a lot of give back, and it sounds like everybody really kind of benefits. This is a true nonprofit, so this is how they work. Okay, very interesting. So Manny, we've got about 5 minutes left in the program. We want to kind of kick back to volunteers and why you need volunteers for the Food for Us project. You're a big part of this, so have at it.
Yeah, so for Food for Us, we're not specifically looking for volunteers, but really looking for residents who are interested in learning more about what's going on with the food in Lynn. So we have 3 different events: April 1st, tomorrow, April 22nd, and then May 6th. They're all on Saturdays. And it's about 5 hours, but it's really interactive. We're doing so many different things. Like I talked about, we'll be having kind of open discussions about what their dreams are of what the Lynn food system should look like, having discussions about and sharing about what their food culture looks like and what their experience has been in food and food access, and then also looking at different data points of mapping, of the mapping data that we and our youth took of the food access points in Lynn, whether it was food retail or restaurants, and also looking at different survey results. So we're still building more surveys. We're still going out there and surveying more people. Mm-hmm. We have about almost 300 surveys that came back, and looking at that data about if people want to grow their own food, are they composting? What is some more things, or what do they look for when they're shopping, whether it's low price, organic food, stuff like that. So it's really getting more residents talking about what their experiences have been in the food system and when they go shopping, and really going more into that. And from that we can build on getting them into the Lynn Growth Steering Committee and meeting with these stakeholders and having these conversations that could develop more change in Lynn.
So an interactive survey, so to say, that would be interesting. I would like to be able, I mean, it's great we have like recycling that's available, put it in the bin, but composting is always something that, I've considered, but I mean, where do you do it in a city like Lynn? So look, residents, we're looking for you guys to participate in the Food for Us project. It's going to be happening on 3 different dates. You can reach out to the information at the bottom of the screen to find out more, but in case you're just listening, Food for Us, April 1st, April 22nd, and May 6th. We're looking for residents to come on down and talk a little bit about what matters to them when it comes to developing more insight in regard to food, local food, access to food. I want to say thank you to my guests for coming on to the program, Manny and John, and I want to say thank you to our viewers at home for tuning in. Thank you to our crew for sticking around and filming the show. That's it for the LCTV Show down here at the studio at Lynn Community Television. I'm Sean Donahue, wishing you all the best.